Okay, so I'm Alex Viñas. I work at Cow Protocol, and today I'm going to talk to you about how Cow Protocol reduces MEV by optimizing transactions through batch auctions. Broken down the talk into 4 topics: MEV, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What is Cow Protocol? Then the difference in the mindsets of maximization versus minimization. And lastly, where are we heading? No, maybe the good, the bad, and the ugly. Will Ethereum remain under this utopian dream of building a decentralized financial world that is fair for every user, regardless of where you're from or what is the size of your wallet? Or will kind of like the TradFi dystopian side take over, whereas always the bigger fish always eat the smaller fish? But first, let's try to define what is MEV. MEV was first coined as miner extractable value, but with the birth of an entire industry around it, now it has been recoined to be maximal extractable value. And what does maximal extractable value mean? Maximal extractable value is sort of this hidden power that the block producers have, and it gives them this ability to include, exclude, or reorder any transaction in a block as how they see fit. And this is a bit of a problem because we're incentivizing at the execution layer for these block producers to not care about kind of like the healthiness of the network. Before the kind of existence of MEV, their only source of revenue was gas fees. But now with the introduction of this sort of like new term, MEV, kind of Ethereum has shifted from just caring about like prioritizing gas fees to hurting the users. And this is a problem because if Ethereum is something great, it's because of the users that has. But where does MEV come from? As we just saw, MEV comes from the execution layer, from sort of this hidden power that the block producers have to reorder or include any transactions as they see fit. And we can constantly see from the data that they're constantly doing so, But it also comes from the application layer. It comes from the application layer because depending on the trading mechanism that you are using today on Ethereum, you're exposing yourself to less or more MEV. It also comes from the fact that we're always going to live in, at least in Ethereum, in a world where there's going to be latency arbitrage. And what does this mean? Well, there's always going to be this sort of like arms race to compete about who gets to arbitrage the price between a centralized exchange and a decentralized exchange. Or even within decentralized exchanges, there's always going to be kind of like this race to see who gets to buy cheap in Uniswap and sell at a higher price in SushiSwap. And then lastly, it happens because we as Ethereum users are allowing this kind of like nonsense that even though the transactions are happening atomically within a single block, the prices do not reflect this atomicity. And what do I mean by that? I mean that like we can see constantly in Ethereum that the transactions completely have the same timestamp, but when you look at them, even though also if they're in the same trading venue and within the same timestamp, they're going to have different prices. And to highlight a little bit the problem that we just saw, we took an example of a block that I think this was from early October. And you can see here that we have 11 different traders that saw 8 different prices for the same token pair. And this is ETH USDT, which is arguably one of the most liquid pairs that you can currently trade today in Ethereum. And this is the issue because this is the root of MEV. This price disparity that we can see, there's a price spread of 1.05% within the prices, is kind of like what's creating this focus of attention to order the transactions in a way that people are kind of sort of manipulating the order of the transactions to exploit the value from the users by giving them a worse price, a worse deal on the trade. But what does MEV mean in DeFi, Oh, whoa. Sorry, that's the wrong title. But anyways, what are the 3 main of attacks of MEV in DeFi? The first one that we have is front running. And this attack is sort of like kind of painful from the point of view of a user because it goes that if we have any sort of transaction that has any value, we'll go from basically I get it to the block producer get it. And basically this happens because when I submit my transaction to the mempool and it has some sort of value, then like the searchers are gonna kind of ally with the block producers to kind of replicate my transaction, insert it in front of mine, And even the irony is that my transaction, even though it's going to revert, it's also going to be included so that they even like get off my gas fees. So in essence, they have got like, I have discovered an opportunity, but they have taken it away from me. Then we also have back running, which in general is more kind of like perceived as less harmful for the users. But one can argue that depending on the type of user that you are, it's still harmful because you're being robbed from taking this opportunity. And why is that? Because if I'm sort of like this trading hedge fund, this whale, or this kind of like, big trader, and I'm going to execute a big trade against an AMM or an aggregator, then I know that I'm going to change the reserve pool prices of certain AMMs. And what this means is that because of my first trade, I'm going to create an arbitrage opportunity on the other AMMs. And basically, since I am the pure owner of that information, I can try to sequence the trades in a way that my first transaction goes through, and then my second transaction is the one that kind of like rebalance the prices of the pools, and I take that arbitrage opportunity. But because I don't have the power to insert the transactions in that order, basically someone else is going to take that opportunity from me. And lastly, the attack that is the most hurtful from the user is the famous sandwich attack. And this is the most hurtful because when you're trading against an AMM or an aggregator, you might think that you're placing a market order, but in reality what you're doing is placing a limit order that's controlled by your slippage tolerance. And what this means is that you open the opportunity for the MEV attackers to kind of exploit the prices that you're going to get. And they exploit it in a way that they're going to put a transaction in front of yours and after yours. And this is painful because basically the way it works is that the first transaction is going to push the price up to your maximal slippage pain point so that then your transaction goes through at a worse price that you actually wanted. Then your transaction pushes the price even higher. And then the MEV attacker kind of does the reverse opposite of the first two transactions. And this way, the MEV attacker has made money at your expense by simply buying cheap and selling high at the fact that you got a worse price than you should have gotten. But how damaging is MEV in DeFi in reality? Well, according to ETH, which is a website specialized in MEV analytics, as of the last 30 days, 99% of the top 10 contracts exploited from MEV are either AMMs or aggregators. Then in the last, maybe not 30 days, but a bit less, we can see that 18 billions out of the $21 billion that MEV volume has moved have been performed just to leverage sandwich attacks. And as we just saw, this is the attack that extracts the most value out of the users. And lastly, Chainsign Analytics, from the data provided by the Flashbots team with MEV Explore, they have calculated that since 2020, around $1.3 billion have been extracted from the user's pocket. And why is these numbers a problem? Well, these numbers are a problem because if we want Ethereum to truly be the world computer and kind of like absorb all the transaction value of the world, then we need to fix MEV. And why? Because if we don't fix MEV, the logical thing to assume with the transaction increase, with the transaction flow increase, is that MEV is also going to increase. And this is going to poke the regulators. And what are the regulators going to do? Well, the regulators, like always, are going to tell us how we should run the market and in which way we should do it. And I don't think anyone in Ethereum in here is up for the regulators telling us what we should or shouldn't do, but rather we're here to build technical solutions to address these type of problems. Now, what is Cow Protocol? Well, Cow Protocol is the trading mechanism that underpins the hopefully now famous UI, CowSwap. And it's similar to an AMM or an aggregator, but with the small yet fundamental difference that it adds a batching layer on top of them that allows us to aggregate multiple trades together and execute them in a single Ethereum transaction. Not only batching allows us to aggregate multiple transactions together, but it also allows us to obtain certain other benefits that are quite important. The main one is that it allows us to give structurally better prices due to cows, which cows stands for coincidence of ones. And basically this is that if within a batch we have two traders that are trading counter opposite orders, then we can match them on a peer-to-peer level. And this means that these two traders are avoiding completely like all the gas costs from interacting with the AMMs or aggregator smart contracts. Then they're also saving on the liquidity provider fees. And then they're also avoiding kind of like a big price impact if the trade is very big. And this is all transformed into a better price for the users. It also allows us to act as a MetaDex aggregator, sort of like the Skyscanner of crypto, in the sense that Cow Protocol queries all the AMMs al aggregator all at once to quote you the price that you would get if you traded directly with one of them. Meaning that your baseline price is always going to be the price that you would get if you had gone directly to the AMM or the aggregator. But if through the batch auctions we can improve it, which most of the times we can, then we'll give you those price improvements to you. It also allows us to do MEV protection, and this is because the batch executors guarantee the price that you're going to get, meaning that the price that you see is the one that you're going to get. There is no possible way that you're going to get a different or worse price than the one we quoted you. And lastly, it also allows us to do gasless swap, because through the different trading model, instead of making you kind of craft the transaction and send the executable transaction directly to the mempool, we use signed messages in a way that we're able to take the fee from the sell token. But how can we actually reduce MEV through batch auctions? Well, the main goal of batch auctions is kind of like reduce the overall interaction of AMMs for the users. And if we can't reduce the level of interactions of AMMs, then at least apply certain rules to the batch auctions that kind of diminish the exposure of MEV of your trades. And how can we do that? No, as we saw, the main way and the best way to kind of get rid of MEV is executing the coincidence of ones. And basically, if you're trading peer-to-peer, then you're not going against a liquidity pool, and that trade just becomes a simple transfer between two parties, and then no one can get in front of you or behind you or kind of do anything to that sort of trade. Then we want to break order dependency by having a single price per asset per batch, and this means that within every batch auction, we enforce uniform clearing prices. And uniform clearing prices means that basically if we have two users trading the same two token pairs, they're going to get the same price because they're in the same batch. No one can get a different price. And what this does is that then it doesn't matter what transaction goes first. If they're going to get the same price, no, order doesn't matter anymore. And this is because the batch executors, which are called the solvers, commit to a price vector, no, that regardless of the order of the transactions, it's always going to yield the same output. And lastly, it allows us to reaggregate the fragmented liquidity of the space via ring trace. And this is important because when we have certain trades that require multiple hubs, then if we can kind of use the liquidity of those trades within the trades themselves, we're avoiding having to do many liquidity pool jumps. And here's an example of the perfect world of a batch that actually happened in Cow Protocol, where we have both a ring train and coincidence of ones, and also uniform clearing prices, no? We can see that in the top we have DAI against AURA and AURA against USDC. Then in this case, going to the example of the uniform clearing prices, no, those two users will get the same price. And the same for the bottom one. If we have DAI USDT and USDC USDT, both those two traders are trading at the same exchange rate because the uniform clearing prices are informed. But not only that, the cool thing is that each trader is kind of providing the liquidity needed for the other trading, and thus avoiding the need for the liquidity pools and creating a perfect ring. No, the top one gives the DAI to the bottom one, the bottom one gives the USDT to the bottom right, and the bottom right gives the USDC to the top one, and AURA goes to the first one. So how do we actually compete for MEV minimization? No? As I said before, Cow Protocol uses these sort of relayers of batch executors that are called solvers, and there is, for every batch, a competition that is outsourced to these solvers. And these solvers are algorithms that specialize in finding price improvements for the users. You can kind of perceive them similar as the searches, with the difference that instead of trying to maximize the value that they extract for the user, they're trying to maximize the value they give to the users. And as of today, we already have 12, well, this is outdated because last week we made a new one, but 13 different solvers, but they can be grouped into 4 groups. We have single order solvers, which basically specialize on tapping into the different aggregators. Then we have batch Cowdex aggregator solvers, which specialize on finding this coincidence of ones within a single batch. Then we have the mixed integer programming solvers, which specialize on settling more than one order in UniV2 liquidity pools alike. And lastly, we have the quasi-linear solvers that specialize in settling trades in kind of fancier pools like Curve or Balancer. So what is the difference between the maximization and minimization mindsets? In the case of Flashbots and Cow Protocol technology, one can argue that they're a little bit two sides of the same coin, of the same technology, because both outsource the settling of the transactions to a third party, and both kind of run this auction competition where the one that yields the most value for their user within their system is going to win the right to settle the trades. But what is Flashbots? No, Flashbots is this group of people that have done tremendous amount of work in helping us understand what is MEV and what is the problem or the reason that like designing MEV-prone systems kind of like yields to the outcomes that we're seeing today. And from their website, we can see that they split their goals now into 3 points. We have first to illuminate the dark forest, which they did this with MEV Explore and MEV Inspect. And this helped to educate a lot of people because it helped to put a precise number of dollars on how much damaging this extraction of value was. Then the second goal was to democratize the extraction, and they've done so by open sourcing both MEV Geth and MEV Boost. But one of the things that we need to be careful is that like even though they're democratizing kind of like their tools, these tools are still for performing like harmful stuff to the users of Ethereum. And this has led to certain centralization levels, as we've seen. And although yesterday they still open sourced their builder, which is kind of like the one that's winning all the blocks to avoid the centralization risk, it's still an open sourcing a tool that kind of like harms the users of Ethereum the most. And lastly, distribute the benefits. This is a part that's still not very known how they're going to achieve it. And also, like we can see that, like if we can argue that they're already distributing the benefits today, they're kind of distributing it to the wrong people because they're giving it to the validators, which are not the ones that are creating the opportunities themselves. And if we go to Cow Protocol now, the main goal of Cow Protocol is to achieve a single price per asset per batch, and we want to do this via three main goals. The first one is protection from the dark forest. As we saw now, we're trying to execute as many constraints of one as possible, then reducing the overall interaction of AMMs. Also, through a delegated trading model execution, we want to avoid this kind of like naive users to go through the mempool, but rather sign the message and let more like professional parties execute the transaction in the mempool for them. And then if we have to go to the AMMs, then the goal is to avoid extraction. No? As we saw before, if we want to kind of reduce the amount of MEV that the trades are exposed, we enforce uniform clearing prices and break the transaction order dependency. And this helps at least reduce the exposure of all the trades that are happening within one batch. And lastly, distribute the benefits. No? If you're trading today on CowSwap, you might have already noticed that for each trade that you execute, you usually get a surplus. And this surplus comes from all these price improvements that the solvers are able to find. So how are they different? No? The technologies. Well, if we look more or less at the metric of how these technologies are evaluated, we can say that in the case of Cow Protocol, no. The level of success, the key metric is the amount of MEV they've been able to reduce. Versus in the case of Flashbot technology, which in here, a small note, it's important to note that we're talking about the technologies and not the teams. So it's like in the end, it's technology. People use it for whatever they want. But in the case of Flashbot technology, the key metric is how much MEV have they extracted from the users. Then if we take a look at the word democratize, we can kind of argue that Cow Protocol is democratizing the protection of MEV by letting anyone run a solver that kind of tries to protect the users from MEV and find the price improvements, versus in the case of the Flashbot technology that they're democratizing the MEV extraction, allowing anyone to extract value from the users. If we look at the goals of both technologies, Cow Protocol technology wants to reduce the overall AMM interactions for the users, versus in the case of Flashbots, they want to increase the amount of AMM interactions. And why is that? Because as we saw, most of MEV comes from like maximizing the slippage tolerance from the users. And then if we look at how the rules of the systems are governed, in the case of Cow Protocol, we see that, hey, the more money to the users, the less MEV there is in the batch, then the higher the chances you have of winning. Versus in the case of Flashbot, we have that the more MEV, the more money to the validator, the less money to the user, and the more MEV, and then the higher the chances you have of winning. So where are we heading? What is the future of DEXs? We believe that the future of DEXs is one that focuses on fairness and cost improvements for the users and like puts the users at the center, no? Rather than kind of like just offering them a quote and then letting them deal with kind of like the dangers of the mempool. We think that the DEX should take care of their users in that sense. Then it's one that offers MEV protection because, as we saw before, if all the transaction value of the world is going to be absorbed by Ethereum, then MEV protection is going to become more and more important. It also puts the users at the center of it because in the end, at least they are the ones that they're creating these sort of like opportunities that are happening within MEV. So they should be the ones rewarded for the benefits of it. And lastly, it abstracts the users from a complicated technology. Like it's unexpected that everyone in the world is gonna know what an RPC is, or even gonna stay up to date, even with the like hottest like new liquidity pools where I can trade or I can farm or I can do whatever. Like even being someone within the space, it's hard to stay up to date. So imagine someone that like has zero knowledge on this. But what does the future of finance look like? No, the future of finance looks like one where, in this case, we have a cow batch builder that establishes that the first transaction of a block, or at least the first trading transaction within a block, is a Cow Protocol settlement. And this is important because if we can achieve that, then basically all the trades that are happening within that batch are completely arbitrage free because there's uniform clearing prices. There is no price disparity within that block. Then that yields to focus on real market efficiency because unlike today where kind of people are competing just to kind of create market inefficiencies to exploit the arbitrage, then the market is kind of not paying attention to the user's orders, but rather paying attention to this latency arbitrage that we saw, the difference in prices versus on-chain versus off-chain, and then this sort of non-DeFi MEV. And also, this allows to combine the utopian side of Flashbots with Cow Protocol technology and yield a much more optimal outcome for the Ethereum users. And how does this look like? Well, as of today, this is the structure of how to submit a transaction in Ethereum. You go through the mempool, and then basically searchers are gonna like look at your transactions and see how can they extract the value out of them, and then send them to the builder, and the builder to the relayer. But this has yielded to like a centralization problem, and also kind of like the fear that like this private order flow will kind of like grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and then Ethereum will just become like a private mempool instead of a public mempool. And what we think the solution for this is basically putting CowSwap and Cow Protocol in the middle and transforming the mentality of searchers to kind of like being cow builders or solvers, as we said before, because this way they can shift their revenue stream from hurting users, from extracting their value, to actually like a revenue stream or maximizing value to the users. And this way also, instead of having users to go through the mempool and kind of like get wrecked, they will go through CowSwap, and then in the end, Cow Protocol will be the one that submits the transaction to the mempool, and thus avoiding the danger of the private order flow. So, if MEV maximization takes over, then we will just have built a new, like the same financial system as before, but with new railguards. So please help us build the future of finance. And that's it. Thank you.